5 tech megacaps are set to release their results this week. These are ones to watch: Apple, Google parent Alphabet, Facebook parent Meta, Amazon, and Microsoft. Netflix released the most expensive film it's ever made over the weekend, The Gray Man, costing $200 million, according to the New York Times. The company's hoping to build a franchise with it to lure in subscribers after shedding customers for 2 straight quarters. The NFL debuting today, a new streaming service, NFL Plus. It'll cost $5 a month. Universal's sci-fi horror thriller movie Nope took the top spot at the weekend box office. Universal is a sister company to CNBC. Jessica Ettinger, CNBC.
Staples has everything for school at great prices. So this year you won't go back to school. You'll be ready to move forward and master 5th grade math.
I can't do this. It's impossible.
Not you, Dad, your daughter. Staples will help her move forward.
Right.
Right now, Staples comp books and number 2 pencils are just 50 cents each. Plus, 2 pocket paper folders are only 25 cents each. Everything on your list at amazing prices. Staples, we're not going back. We're going forward to school. Ends 8/27, in-store only, limit 30.
When you're an innovative business, every blinking cursor, every blank page is an opportunity. What will you do with it? Will you make something better or create something new? Our Dell Technologies advisors provide you with tools and expertise to do incredible things. Because we believe there's an innovator in all of us. For advice on smart PCs powered by Intel V Pro that's built for business, call a Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show on KCAA. We'll be right back after this message from our sponsor, Teamsters 1932, a strong union with 14,000 members in the IE. Go to Teamsters1932.org for more information. Are you underpaid and overworked? Is a living wage and employee benefits like affordable health care more of a dream than a reality for you and your family? If so, it's time to form a union. Don't be denied the wages and benefits you deserve. Come together in a union with the power of numbers. A union is not a privilege, it's your right, and it will make a difference. Contact Teamsters Local 1932, a powerful and successful labor union in San Bernardino, by visiting Teamsters1932.org/organize to start today.
One of the best ways to build a healthier local economy is by shopping locally. Teamster Advantage is a shop local program started by Teamster Local 1932 that has brought together hundreds of locally owned businesses to provide discounts for residents who make shopping locally their priority. Everything from restaurants like Corky's to fun times at SB Raceway and much, much more. If you're not currently a Teamster and you want access to these local business discounts, contact Jennifer at 909-889-8377, extension 224. Give her a call. That number again is 909-889-8377, extension 224. Are you graduating high school soon and wondering what to do next? College is one option, but why not consider the high-paying jobs made possible by union power? Labor Union Teamsters Local 1932 has opened a training center to get you into the high school to high-paying job pipeline. You'll learn all the skills needed to excel in opportunities across industries. Visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org. Are you looking for a good union job? The Inland Empire's 14,000 members strong Teamsters Local 1932 has opened a training center to get working people trained and placed in open positions in public service clerical work and in jobs in the logistics industry. This is a new opportunity to advance your career and raise standards across the region. Visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org. Located in the heart of San Bernardino, California, the Teamsters Local 1932 Training Center is designed to train workers for high-demand, good-paying jobs in various industries throughout the Inland Empire. If you want a pathway to a high-paying job and the respect that comes with a union contract, visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
Labor unions built the middle class, and the middle class built America. That's the message from Teamsters Local 1932, a strong and successful labor union based in San Bernardino that represents over 14,000 hardworking people across the Inland Empire. The Teamsters are ready to help you organize for better pay, increased benefits, and improved working conditions. Reach out to Teamsters 1932 at teamsters1932.org/organize to speak with an organizer today.
Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
Tonight's testimony and evidence is as sobering as it is straightforward. Within minutes of stepping off the ellipse stage, Donald Trump knew about the violent attack on the Capitol. From the comfort of his dining room, he watched on TV as the attack escalated. He sent tweets that inflamed and expressed support for the desire of some to literally kill Vice President Mike Pence. For 3 hours, he refused to call off the attack. Donald Trump refused to take the urgent advice he received that day. Not from his political opponents or from the liberal media, but from his own family, his own friends, his own staff, and his own advisors. In the midst of an attack, when there was no time for politics, the people closest to Trump told him the truth. It was his supporters attacking the Capitol, and he alone could get through to them. So they pled for him to act, to place his country above himself. Still, he refused to lead and to meet the moment to honor his oath. It was only once the vice president and the members of Congress were in secure locations and the officers defending the Capitol began to turn the tide that then President Trump engaged in the political theater of telling the mob to go home. And even then, he told them all they were special and that he loved them. Whatever your politics, whatever you think about the outcome of the election, we as Americans must all agree on this. Donald Trump's conduct on January 6th was a supreme violation of his oath of office and a complete dereliction of his duty to our nation. It is a stain on our history. It is a dishonor to all those who have sacrificed and died in service of our democracy. When we present our full findings, we will recommend changes to laws and policies to guard against another January 6th. The reason that's imperative is that the forces Donald Trump ignited that day have not gone away. The militant, intolerant ideologies, the militias, the alienation and the disaffection, the weird fantasies and disinformation. They're all still out there, ready to go. That's the elephant in the room. But if January 6th has reminded us of anything, I pray it has reminded us of this. Laws are just words on paper. They mean nothing without public servants dedicated to the rule of law. and who are held accountable by a public that believes oaths matter more than party tribalism or the cheap thrill of scoring political points. We, the people, must demand more of our politicians and ourselves. Oaths matter. Character matters. Truth matters. If we do not renew our faith and commitment to these principles, this great experiment of ours, our shining beacon on a hill, will not endure. I yield to the gentlewoman from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Kinzinger. Throughout our hearings, we've provided many facts and painted a vivid picture of the events of January 6th. The violence, the human toll, both emotional and physical, including the tragic loss of life. The threats to our Constitution, the rule of law, and the danger to this nation, a nation we all love as Americans. In tonight's hearing, we've gone into great detail about the events inside the White House on January 6th. We've described how the President of the United States, who was bound by oath to the Constitution and by duty to ensure the laws are faithfully executed, took no action when the cornerstone of our democracy, a peaceful transition of power, was under attack. But it's more than that. Donald Trump summoned a violent mob and promised to lead that mob to the Capitol to compel those he thought would cave to that kind of pressure. And when he was thwarted in his effort to lead the armed uprising, he instigated the attackers to target the vice president with violence, a man who just wanted to do his constitutional duty. So in the end, this is not, as it may appear, a story of inaction in a time of crisis, but instead it was the final action of Donald Trump's own plan to assert the will of the American people and remain in power. Not until it was clear that his effort to violently disrupt or delay the counting of the election results had failed did he send a message to his supporters in which he commiserated with their pain, and he told them affectionately to go home. That was not the message of condemnation and just punishment for those who broke the law that we expect from a president whose oath and duty is to ensure the laws are faithfully executed. But instead, it was his newest version of stand back and stand by. To me, this is personal. I first swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution against enemies foreign and domestic when I entered the U.S. Naval Academy at age 17. I spent 2 decades on ships at sea, defending our nation from known and identifiable foreign enemies who sought to do us harm. I never imagined that that enemy would come from within. I was not as prescient as Abraham Lincoln, who 23 years before the Civil War said, "If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and its finisher." Donald Trump was the author, and we the people, for ourselves and our posterity, should not let Donald Trump be the finisher. Thank you, and I yield to the Vice Chair.
We owe a debt to all of those who have and will appear here. And that brings me to another point. This committee has shown you the testimony of dozens of Republican witnesses, those who served President Trump loyally for years. The case against Donald Trump in these hearings is not made by witnesses who were his political enemies. It is instead a series of confessions by Donald Trump's own appointees, his own friends, his own campaign officials, people who worked for him for years, and his own family. They have come forward and they have told the American people the truth. And for those of you who seem to think the evidence would be different if Republican leader McCarthy had not withdrawn his nominees from this committee, let me ask you this. Do you really think Bill Barr is such a delicate flower that he would wilt under cross-examination? Pat Cipollone, Eric Hirschman, Jeff Rosen, Richard Donahue. Of course they aren't. None of our witnesses are. At one point in 2016, when he was first running for office, Donald Trump said this: "I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters." That quote came to mind last week when audio from Trump advisor Steve Bannon surfaced from October 31st, 2020, just a few days before the presidential election. Let's listen.
And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory, right? He's going to declare victory. But that doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner. The Democrats, more of our people vote early that count. Theirs voted mail. And so they're going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of it. That's our strategy. He's going to declare himself a winner. So when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's going to be a firestorm. Also, if Trump is losing by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it's going to be even crazier. No, because he's going to sit right there and say they stole it.
And of course, 4 days later, President Trump declared victory when his own campaign advisors told him he had absolutely no basis to do so. What the new Steve Bannon audio demonstrates is that Donald Trump's plan to falsely claim victory in 2020, no matter what the facts actually were, was premeditated. Perhaps worse, Donald Trump believed he could convince his voters to buy it, whether he had any actual evidence of fraud or not. And this same thing continued to occur from Election Day onward until January 6th. Donald Trump was confident that he could convince his supporters the election was stolen, no matter how many lawsuits he lost, and he lost scores of them. He was told over and over again in immense detail that the election was not stolen. There was no evidence of widespread fraud. It didn't matter. Donald Trump was confident he could persuade his supporters to believe whatever he said, no matter how outlandish, and ultimately that they could be summoned to Washington to help him remain president for another term. As we showed you last week, even President Trump's legal team, led by Rudy Giuliani, knew they had no actual evidence to demonstrate the election was stolen. Again, it didn't matter. Here's the worst part. Donald Trump knows that millions of Americans who supported him would stand up and defend our nation were it threatened. They would put their lives and their freedom at stake to protect her. And he is preying on their patriotism. He is preying on their sense of justice. And on January 6th, Donald Trump turned their love of country into a weapon against our Capitol and our Constitution. He has purposely created the false impression that America is threatened by a foreign force controlling voting machines, or that a wave of tens of millions of false ballots were secretly injected into our election system, or that ballot workers have secret thumb drives and are stealing elections with them. All complete nonsense. We must remember that we cannot abandon the truth and remain a free nation. In late November of 2020, while President Trump was still pursuing lawsuits, many of us were urging him to put any genuine evidence of fraud forward in the courts and to accept the outcome of those cases. As January 6th approached, I circulated a memo to my Republican colleagues explaining why our congressional proceedings to count electoral votes could not be used to change the outcome of the election. But what I did not know at the time was that President Trump's own advisors, also Republicans, also conservatives, including his White House counsel, his Justice Department, his campaign officials, they were all telling him almost exactly the same thing I was telling my colleagues. There was no evidence of fraud or irregularities sufficient to change the election outcome. Our courts had ruled. It was over. Now we know that it didn't matter what any of us said because Donald Trump wasn't looking for the right answer legally or the right answer factually. He was looking for a way to remain in office. Let's put that aside for a moment and focus just on what we saw today. In our hearing tonight, you saw an American president faced with a stark and unmistakable choice between right and wrong. There was no ambiguity, no nuance. Donald Trump made a purposeful choice to violate his oath of office, to ignore the ongoing violence against law enforcement, to threaten our constitutional order. There is no way to excuse that behavior. It was indefensible. And every American must consider this. Can a president who is willing to make the choices Donald Trump made during the violence of January 6th ever be trusted with any position of authority in our great nation again? In this room, in 1918, the Committee on Women's Suffrage convened to discuss and debate whether women should be granted the right to vote. This room is full of history, and we on this committee know we have a solemn obligation not to idly squander what so many Americans have fought and died for. Ronald Reagan's great ally, Margaret Thatcher, said this: "Let it never be said that the dedication of those who love freedom is less than the determination of those who would destroy it." Let me assure every one of you this: our committee understands the gravity of this moment, the consequences for our nation. We have much work yet to do, and we will see you all in September.
My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the Pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring.
So that was an interesting hearing. I guess that's the easiest way to put that. In listening to a lot of the comments, a lot of the stories coming out, I keep coming back to this thing that was just said a little bit ago during the hearing that grabbed my attention. Trump told the rioters that they were special on one hand, and Liz Cheney made the defense that they were special, they were patriotic, and good, God-fearing Americans. And Trump took advantage of that, and I'm going to struggle with that. I think I'm going to struggle with that argument. I think I am. But here to share some thoughts on where we are with this. Well, with the response, I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come share some thoughts. She's a reporter over at Raw Story. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hello, how are you?
I'm processing all of the information, lots of it. I think I'm hung up on the ending a little bit. The ending, the justification, I'm struggling with just a little bit. This idea that those people that were in the Capitol, the people who were smashing the windows, who were urinating on desks, and yes, defecating on the floor. I'm sorry, that's not patriotic. I'm struggling with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something that I wonder if that's a piece of this, because they kind of have to move this out of, like, this is a bigger issue than just the insurrectionists on January 6th. And they're trying to make the tie that Donald Trump basically manipulated people, that he's been manipulating people since the very beginning. And I think that is a cop-out for a lot of militia members and Tea Party members and, folks that have been doing this kind of right-wing nuttery for a long time. So the idea that they are somehow these soft-hearted patriots who otherwise would be cuddling with cops outside of the Capitol, I think, is a little far-fetched. But I get what she's trying to do.
She's trying to save the Republican Party is what she's trying to do.
Well, I think there's that, but I think she's trying to make it seem like this is draw all of the conclusions that Trump is the catalyst. That none of this would have happened without Donald Trump, because that is the pillar of indictment that I feel like we're going for here.
No, and I think I think they did if that was the goal, if it's all about Trump, it's all about going after, taking out the top of the ticket there. I think they've done that. I think they've done that masterfully. As where I still want to see the money, I want to see the people who funded this. I want it all. I'm greedy that way. I think it was as they said, a stain on the history of this country, something that has to be cleaned up. And the only way we do that is by sunshine and disinfectant and getting rid of the people who are behind all this.
Absolutely. And that's a big piece of what I feel like. There was a good New York Times story this week that talked about the transition from the Tea Party to the MAGA movement, and talking about the Women for America First creator, Amy Kramer, and how she came out of the Tea Party and then became this MAGA person. And she basically, the whole story ends with her saying, I was here before Donald Trump. I'll be here after Donald Trump. We're already moving on from Donald Trump. And there is a radical right-wing terrorism aspect of this that we have not dealt with. I think we've sort of danced around the idea about it, and we've talked about how it needs to be fully funded, that Homeland Security can go after these people, and that the FBI has more resources for this. But the reality is this is the manifestation of when you have somebody who lights the powder keg of right-wing, crazy people and militias and all of this. And there was a poll or a survey. The University of California at Davis took something like 9,000 people and asked them, opinions about, where do you think the country is going? And I think it's like 50.1% said that they anticipate a civil war within the next few years. I think we make jokes about that sometimes, but holy crap.
No, it's crazy. And there's part of me that goes, how much of that is that's what you want, or that's what you expect, or it's what we're being repeatedly told is coming, because this is
those nutters.
Right. This is where I come back to, I know a couple people who are we're going to have civil war, but the majority of people I know, they just want to lead family lives. They want good schools and good, safe neighborhoods. They want jobs. There's a lot more that pulls us together. And I look at, what we see out of the F channel, what we see out of the right-wing outrage machine. And it really is about pushing this narrative of division and ripping us apart. And I think that has to be dealt with.
I agree. It's one of the biggest things that happened today that I think was the most important is that OAN was dropped from another carrier. They were dropped from, was it Dish? And now they've been dropped from Verizon. The more, I think, networks like that, the more cable companies like that say this is dangerous for us to be allowing stuff like this on our airwaves, I think the better. But then on the flip side, you're just basically driving them into their own little hole of organizing. And so it's like you have this weird balance of, do we want to see it so that we can monitor it, or do we want to isolate them further?
No, see, I'm okay with them being in their hole like they've been, because we've always had these crazy groups.
Right.
They've always been in the shadows. The problem is we had a president that emboldened them to come out and do mass recruiting, and then to find others and they go, no, it's okay. It's okay to be a white supremacist lunatic. It's okay to be a homophobe. It's okay to be, check the box. No, I want you in your hole.
Take your hoods off now.
Keep your hood in the closet.
Keep your hoods on. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think that's one of the things that we've seen with some of the nutters who've been, some of the militia people who've been marching lately, that they're covering their faces back up again. And it's like, oh, good. Just please, just go ahead and put the whole hood on for us, because that's just really helpful to be able to identify that that's who you are.
No, it's just crazy. It's crazy, the stuff that we've seen come out of this committee. Anything today that you would go, something I didn't know. I'll tell you what I didn't know. I didn't know how close they got to Mike Pence. I knew they were close. I knew there was the parking garage thing. I knew they were kind of close. They were, I guess they said, like 5 feet?
Yeah, initially we had heard, I think early in, after the 6th, we heard it was within 100 feet. And then I want to say maybe a month ago, we learned it was within 40 feet. And now we're finding out that, no, they were right there. We had a member of Congress who talked to us tonight who said that she watched tapes of her and a couple of other members running into the third floor elevator. And 30 seconds after they got into the elevator, that's when the crowd moved through. And she said, I had no idea that they were that close to us. And I think that's what a lot of members have seen throughout the course of this, is just how dangerous it was. I think everybody knew and they were scared, but the level of fear extended far beyond, new members of Congress who've never seen anything like this before. We had Secret Service agents who were relaying messages to their family because they thought that they were going to die.
Yeah, I mean, nobody has seen this before. And I mean, this is, new members of Congress, old members of Congress, nobody has lived through this before. And nobody should have to live through this again. Look, we have disagreements, and I think Matthew Pottinger's comments about, looking back to the Nixon election and the Kennedy election back in 60, looking back to the Gore-Bush election in 2000, that's the right frame. If you don't get the outcome you want, you go to court. If you don't agree with the decision, well, that's our system. You move on. Look, I'm bitter over the 2000 election. I think this country would be completely different if we had a President Gore instead of a President Bush. But you know what? That was the rule of law, and you followed it, and you moved on. Yet we got a president.
I didn't go to the Capitol. In a riot. Did you?
No, I did not.
Yeah.
But then again, I didn't have someone who was calling me there. Not that I would have gone, but I didn't have someone who knew his power over me and summonsed me there. Because look, at the end of this, no matter what you say about the people who were there on January 6th, they were there with one mission, and that was to stop the certification of the election. I don't care what you say about why you were there. Oh, no, it was a picnic day. No, it was a wonderful day. It's a day of love and family and God, fear, and Christian being, blah, 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 blah. No, you were there for one purpose under the banner of Stop the Steal. That's what you were there for. There's no other justification. Stop talking. End of sentence.
Yeah, I agree. And this is, I think, what the committee has been aiming toward, is that they are connecting this with, this was all planned. Every piece and part of it was part of a conversation that Trump started having as early as the 1st of December. And, that was part of what all of his crazy, nutty friends and lawyers were trying to figure out, is how can we, if this doesn't work, then what's next? And I think obviously this came up for what's next. And what we've seen over and over again is that no one else in the White House really had any idea of what that this was going to happen, and that Trump was essentially behind it. And what's been interesting is seeing all of these people who were on the Trump train, who were Trump staffers, people who should know, like we do, that he's a complete psycho, right? Like, I feel like years now we saw this guy campaign through 2016. We saw what kind of person he was. We saw him bragging about saying, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and nothing would happen to me. So these people went to work for him, but they were surprised on January 6th when he was like, well, let him hang him. Like, it's shocking to see that they were surprised, but at the same time, you're just like, what? I wonder, I had this discussion with my friend Edry, and we were just like, is this because you're so delusional that you think that he has like a normal side to him? Or are you, do you think that he is all for show and that none of this was real? It's just like, where do you get this idea that he honestly would have thought that, he would have seen this and thought, this is really bad.
Wow.
That's what a normal person thinks, and that's not who he is. That's never who he has been.
No, that's the crazy part, and it's really bizarre. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here with Sarah Burris. She's a reporter over at Raw Story. Make sure you check out the work she does over at Raw Story, rawstory.com, the website. If you've missed any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Always there, always available. You can get that at thericksmithshow.com. Also, remember, follow us on social media at thericksmithshow.com, on Twitter at Rick Smith Show. You got questions, comments? Email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally.
The best way to strengthen America's economy? How about investing in America's fastest growing industry? Clean energy. It means millions of jobs that pay well and can't be outsourced. And lower utility costs for families. Congress, let's get it done.
So, again, I'm looking at this hearing, and so much to dig into, so much to grab a hold of, I'm stuck on Donald Trump is a stain on our history, and I'm stuck on that because it's true. What happened on January 6th is a stain on our history. I'm here to share some thoughts on the hearing. I wanted to get our good friend Bob Ney to come on, former Ohio congressman and political analyst. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So let's jump right into it. Thoughts on the presentation of the hearing here?
Quite amazing. It's sobering. It was well done. And look, Rick, I'm a political junkie, a political addict. I was in office 24 years. I pay attention to things, even now because I do radio and, you research things. I was in charge of House Administration. Zoe Lofgren's on the committee. I was, what she is now as chair. So I know the intricacies of the Capitol, et cetera. I talked to people in D.C. Having said all of that, this was fresh, new, precise, minute by minute, hour by hour information that is sobering. It just blows my mind when you look at what this hearing was involved with, was to fixate itself upon what the president was doing and his response to the situation, and then they would follow with the witnesses. And the most telling thing of this entire thing is, once again, these are all Trump people. And look, when Pottinger started his statement, and he was, with the National Security Agency, he makes it clear that Trump did some good things. Trump did this, the China, attitude Trump had, et cetera. And then they go into what he believed Trump should have done, what he was doing, and what he knew. So again, it's painful to watch it, but it's sobering truth. I thought it was well done.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done. And
wow.
And again, you're going through that minute by minute, the fact that for all of that time did nothing, and it wasn't until the Pentagon called, it wasn't until Mike Pence did some stuff, it wasn't until everybody was moving in the direction to call the National Guard that they're like, we better put on at least make it look like we tried, and that's when the action actually happened.
Right, and then all the people urging him, It still went back to statements by Jared Kushner. And it went back through, everything that verifies that this is accurate. They couldn't get him to budge. When they would get him to budge somewhat, he still would not want to say certain things. The outtakes were, it was amazing to watch the outtakes and his, you could tell he didn't want to say this. He didn't want to be there. He was cutting words out. And no matter what, and again, even though I have paid attention to the time frames in the committee, when they laid it out tonight, and you see where he was, what he was not doing, which is the important part, and his fixation and isolation while all of this is going on at the Capitol, which is inexcusable what was done to the Capitol, and it focused on where he was at. This was about Donald Trump, not the Constitution, not the Vice President, not the election process, not the good of the country. This was pure Trump still trying to take the election.
Yeah.
He, as they were storming the Capitol inside, and he knew it, he was calling senators. He was calling them, trying to stop the eleelection.
And I think we knew some of that already. I think some of that had already leaked out.
You have to see it,
Yeah.
You're right. We knew it, but once you see this effectively put together, as this committee did, it's very powerful.
No, and the juxtaposition of Trump, lazy, in the dining room, watching, his handiwork on Fox, doing virtually nothing, and then you've got everybody else working diligently into the night to actually try and make. I mean, what time did Trump finally go off to bed? Was it like 6 o'clock, like 6:15, 6:27? Is what they said he went off to bed, and yet you still had everyone else working till. When did they certify? Sometime 2, 3 o'clock in the morning?
3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
Yeah, he's off sleeping like a baby, and the mess that he's created, you've got people cleaning up. Again, I just thought this was fantastic.
Well done.
Well done. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman and political analyst. I want to bring back in our good friend Sarah Burris. Sarah's a reporter over at Raw Story. Also wanted to get some thoughts from both of you guys on this stuff because, again, I go back to this. And Sarah, thanks for sticking around with us.
Yeah, you bet.
So I go back to this, and how do you think this stuff is going to play? Do you see let's start with you, Sarah. How do you think this is going to play tomorrow? How do you think this is going to, any reaction? Do you think this is going to move the needle in Trump world? Do you think that they're going to see Trump saying the words that he was saying and go, oh my God, I was the dupe? Is there that light bulb moment where they go, I'm the idiot here? Do you think that happens?
I don't think that there are. I think people who are maybe casual Trump fans, you're starting to see some of those folks flip. People who were like Obama voters in 2012 and then Trump voters in 2020. You're starting to see some polling about that where those folks are flipping back. But I think a lot of that core, 30% of nutters, I think we have 30% of nutters who are just going to stay. If it's not Donald Trump, even if it's not him, I think it's going to be somebody else, right? Like I feel bad for Mike Pence. He, poor guy, thinks that he really has a shot at being president. It's like, dude, you got 30% of the party who's still, up Trump's butt. There's no way. There's no way. These people tried to kill you. Do you not understand that?
No.
But my barometer has always sort of been my mother, and my mother told me today, she was like, God, I wish these things would be over because watching them is horrible and it makes me sick every time. And it's like, oh, well, okay.
I hope that's not the response. Bob, let's get your thoughts. Do you think this is going to move the needle much at all?
Well, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Sarah said, but I think where this moves the needle, and I sat today for 2 hours with a longtime top political Democratic consultant, and we've been friends a long time. We went over the whole thing, and I talked about the hearing, before obviously it was on because it was at lunch today, and I was telling him I think if the hearing was as I thought it would come out, which it did, came out better. I think that the needle this moves is within the political spectrum of the kind of powers to be, the people that move and shake on the Republican side. I think this hurts Trump, and I've said this before. I don't believe he'll run. I think he'll announce, and he'll find some reason then, to not carry it out. But I agree, Pence he's done. There's other people, but beyond that, I think if anything, this has hurt him with enough people, not the base that loves him if he would, shot somebody in Manhattan, but I think that this has hurt him with some fringe political people within the Republican Party. There was a Wisconsin focus group, which I love focus groups, you dig in, the people that were the Obama people, and then they switch, et cetera. Trump's now lost them. So I think some of that element has went away from me. But most important, I think these hearings have effectively chilled some of the people that are close to the Trump orbit to make them think that he shouldn't run. Now, at the end of the day, why do I think that he won't run? He might announce to try to escape some problems. I don't think he'll run, and I've been saying this since January, as you know, because he doesn't want to lose again.
No.
He won't run because it's a narcissistic, pure Trump world thing.
No, I also wanted to get your thoughts because, look, he still hasn't conceded. He's never going to concede. In fact,
Right.
there was a story just the other day that he's still pushing in Wisconsin to have them overturn the 2020 election.
Right. He just made a call. Right.
And you go, at what point do you just go, you know what? You got to give it up. It's over. Is he, is it going to be 10 years down the road still trying to overturn the 2020 election?
Well, yes, he is. And the Republicans, look, the last thing they want is to obsess on the election. They want to hit gasoline tax, economy, crime. You know the mantra. That's what they want. They don't want this to be the issue in the fall. They have other issues that they want. So, but he doesn't care. Donald Trump doesn't care about what the Republican Party and what's best about November for them. He cares about Donald Trump, and so he'll run this thing forever. This will be the forever stolen election.
Yeah, and he's still raising money off of it, oddly enough,
Sure
which is just bizarre. Sarah, your thoughts? I mean, you got him still out there, saying, hey, let's overturn Wisconsin. I mean, he's still fixated on this, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy.
No, it's definitely not healthy. And the congressman's right. The point he makes about the focus group in Wisconsin, that same company did a focus group the month before in Arizona where they had the exact same results, and that was before the Republicans from Arizona testified and before Cassidy Hutchinson testified. So I think just knowing that alone is huge in understanding where the Republican Party is right now as, not necessarily the nutter base, but the people who feel so disaffected by the party and who are, leaving it in droves. But I would say too, my favorite piece of the whole thing was that video that they showed that the congressman mentioned too, where Trump was trying to not say the words that bothered him. I would say I would love to have on a T-shirt, yesterday is a hard word to say. But other than that, like the whole thing where he's just like the faces he's making and the slamming of the podium and
like a man baby.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we had heard stories about this, but seeing it is really different than I think when I pictured it. Just I really sort of imagined this, this whining little man baby, and he really was just slamming his fists and making weird faces.
Sarah's so right on this point, Rick. We all know Trump and what he's like, etc. But these visuals tonight really said so much, with his slamming, with his whole demeanor. It was scary, and you're standing there watching somebody that, frankly, is completely out of touch with reality. He's in his own world of reality.
I think, too, look at the statement that he put out. I actually thought it was fake when I saw it, where he basically just admits to everything. The one thing that I do agree on it is, like, his last line, he said, boy, the country would be a different place if I won. It's like, well, yeah. But yeah, he says, he makes it clear that he's going after, he was trying to go after Mike Pence. And
yeah, that's an interesting, and I want to get your both thoughts on this because we've seen this frame before of Trump saying, well, at least they care more about me than you do. This was pointed, I think it was Jamie Herrera Butler who said it in an interview that hey, well, they care more than these people do, or the people around him, and everyone's saying. And I guess the amazing part of this to me, and I think the really surprising part for me, is how everybody around him, as much as they are ideologically with him, in this moment, they're all in unison saying, no, you got to stop this. This is bad. Mm-hmm. The only person who thinks it's a good idea is, well, the most powerful man in the world. But, what do you think of that frame? And let's start with you, Sarah, this idea that, well, those people who are rioting and, taking a dump on the floor of our Capitol, they care more than, well, the Congress people who are running for their lives.
Yeah, I think that's a joke. That's really sad. And I think that's the part of the hearing that was the most depressing for me, is this idea that, somehow we're giving these folks a pass. And we're seeing that in the sentencing, too. I think there's the one pro-Trump judge who's giving really light sentences. And, it's really frustrating, I think, too, that we're not holding a lot of people accountable. And I've seen a couple. The thing that Merrick Garland said this week, right? That's the one piece where, he seemed to get annoyed when people were pressing him on, no, seriously, like, do you care about this indictment thing? He's like, I can't say it any plainer. Nobody's above the law. So, fingers crossed, I guess.
Yeah. But, again, this is one of those things. Let's go back to you, Bob, because, you were a member of Congress. One of the things that came out of this that surprised me, and Sarah and I talked about this in the last segment, about just how close they got to Mike Pence, how close they got to everyone. And these buildings, this building, how close were they to snatching someone and literally hanging the vice president?
Oh, how it didn't happen is beyond me. I mean, watching this tonight it's very emotional for me, because not only was I a member, I chaired House Administration, oversaw the Capitol Hill Police, interacted with them, interacted with Democrat and Republican staff members for what they wanted, to make the House work better, etc. And so these are human beings. And to listen to McCarthy, the minority leader, who calls Trump and is begging, because McCarthy knows somebody's going to get killed, some staffer or member or both. He knows the possibility was real. They were going to get killed. And they came by luck. And the brave Capitol Hill Police, and some luck, somebody wasn't hurt seriously or killed. As far as, we had some officers, of course, that was horrible, but as far as a member or staff. And the most chilling moment is McCarthy, begging, obviously, help us, And what does Trump say to him? Basically, I'll put it in my own terms, maybe these people have more guts and more smarts than you do. Mm-hmm. That's how he answers to the minority leader who's hunkered down thinking that he's going to be possibly killed too. That's how Trump answers him.
And what's amazing to me, Bob, and I've thought about this, a lot. The Republicans, the Freedom Caucus, the Boeberts, the Greens, the Gateses, the Gomerts, the Scott Perrys, all of them. They should have been walking through the halls. I mean, because those are their people. They should have been completely safe. They shouldn't have been cowering in the chamber like everybody else was, because, well, those are their people. They should have been out stopping them. Why weren't they? Why were they running?
Well, it's like Holly. You can be up there with the Capitol Hill Police armed, behind you, and the crowd down by the fence, and he raises the fist in the air, and then I thought it was a great clip. Then you see him running, and then they play it again in slow motion, running out the Capitol. What was he running for? Why didn't he go down to the rotunda and say, "Hey, how y'all doing?
Yeah.
I fist bumped you earlier. Remember?
Yeah.
Remember me?"
Yeah. Okay. Slow your roll. Exactly,
Right.
Sarah. Your
yeah,
thoughts?
Like, well, let's bump hands right now. I don't think he did that.
Exactly.
He ran.
He ran just like all of them did. And I think too, the thing about members of Congress is, there's 11 billion of them, whereas senators is only 100. And so I think a lot of those members who aren't Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert and those guys, they may be some of the pro-Trump members, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those rioters didn't know what they looked like. So there's some, the nutters that, I mean, hell, I'm not sure I could have picked out Gosar, out of a crowd. Because the photo I have of him is old and he's got his, hair all funky in the front. And so I some of these people, I think if they saw a member with their pen on, they could have gone crazy on him. They could have gone full, stirring them up.
Well, let me ask you that, Bob. What would have stopped, because she makes a great point. Most members of Congress, nobody knows. You know the ones who are on Fox News, the ones who occasionally get on CNN, some of the leadership, but some of the lesser known people, you wouldn't be able to pick out of a lineup. What would have stopped them from taking off the pin, throwing on a hoodie, and walking out the front door? Right.
I mean, and if they had went down there, and even if some of the people, for example, knew them, and they said, "Well, wait a minute, I'm with you," the people might have turned on them and said, "Well, you didn't do enough. You didn't do it."
Yeah.
I mean, this was Russian roulette. I argue that Hawley himself, who does his great brave hand up in the air, he would have been physically injured because the crowd was so angry and so violent and so vile. They would have just probably said, "Well, what are you doing? You really didn't stop it. Let's beat him up." I mean, that definitely could happen.
Yeah, they wanted blood.
They wanted somebody.
Yeah. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman and political analyst, and Sarah Burris, reporter at Raw Story. Make sure you check out her work at rawstory.com. So let me ask you the big question now to kind of move this in the wrap-up stage. Is this going to matter on the grand scheme of things? Does this? They didn't call for indictments. They didn't call for any criminal anything. I mean, this just kind of ended with we're better than this, that kind of spiel. I'm assuming there's probably going to be another hearing down the road.
Right.
I also want to get your thoughts on that. But does this then move us to another stage? Let's start with you, Bob. Where do you think this goes from here?
Well, I don't think it's going to go into the Department of Justice looking at this hearing tonight and saying, "Okay, we're going to go indict somebody." I don't think it's going to go into that phase. I don't think the committee's intent tonight was to say, "Here you go. Now this one, ought to be indicted, or you ought to go after the president." But I think what was served here tonight was what our country needs. This needs to be told. It needs to be clarified. This wasn't a matter of somebody said something, "Hey, hi, how are you, crowd? Go get him," and then that was it. We needed to know where the highest level, which is the presidency, the president in our country, we need to know what happened, where they were at, and most importantly, we need to know how on the edge we really were. So I think that's what, if anything, that the committee serves a purpose. Now, what happens after this, and who looks at it and does something on a justice level, it's a different story. But I think they really served the country's interests on a bipartisan basis with Republicans, here tonight on the testifying, and witnesses. I think they did the country, in my opinion, a favor to lay this out. So, make judgment calls, whatever you want, but here's what really happened, and this is how bad it really was within the Oval Office.
It's amazing. Sarah, your thoughts?
I agree. I totally agree. I think this has moved the needle in a huge way. We've already seen it in polling and obviously the focus groups we both mentioned, but I'm not sure tonight is, the one night that matters the most. I think is on the whole, the country that has watched this, the things that everybody has seen that they didn't know before. And I think some of the videos, some of the comments from, the generals I think that'll probably end up on the news shows that more the public will see who didn't watch tonight. But I think the public is where they are already on this. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be more people think he should be indicted or more people agree this is a really important committee. And then I think we look next to what the heck was the Secret Service doing?
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
Assimilate Indigenous children into Canada's Christian